I first sort of saw it first was taught it, and when I actually started using it for myself. So the whole kind of like gradual uptake is like it's fine and normal. But hopefully this will make you feel less horrible about Git than I felt at first. So before I talk about Git specifically, if you're gonna follow along, the screen share, yeah, that's right. Okay, so have you guys installed Git on your computers? If you have, open a terminal, so Git bash if you're on Windows, and type git -- version and hit enter. And if you get something like some output like version something, it's probably more new than this, then you have it and you're ready to go. If you don't, if it says an error, then flag one of the two execs and they can help you. And the other thing you can do if you're bored while I'm talking is sign up for a GitHub account, if you did not do that already. Okay. So has this happened to any of you before, where you're working on a document and you think, okay, I'm going to change it, but I kind of want to make sure that I still have what I had in the past, so I'm going to rename it _2 or _v2, something. Or you resave over something and then you're like, oh crap, I really wanted to see what I had done before, but it's gone now. Or you're looking back into the past at all of these different versions. And you're like, I know I wrote something good at one point. I don't know which one it was though. So you're opening all these different files. I just want to say though that this is version control because you are aware that you should have versions of things. And if you use something like Dropbox, or I think it's called Time Machine with Apple, it does this automatically for you in many cases. So Git is kind of like the master controlled way of doing what most of us at this point kind of realize we already need to do, which is keep track of versions of things. This is a folder from my computer from 2016. And this is like, for real, me and my supervisor going back and forth. So it's like working doc. This is my supervisor. Now it's me. Now it's the second version, third, fourth, 5. So after a while, it's like, you know, this is fine for like 5, but it can get kind of out of hand. And the other thing that Git can help you with is, even if you are doing something like this, when you go back to try to find something in the past, you might not know why you made a particular change. So Git, as we'll see, kind of saves changes and also information about why you made that change. So the whole philosophy of Git and of kind of hardcore version control is that you want to save only the changes and not a whole new document every time. And there's kind of a practical reason for this, which is just that you'd save a lot of space. So if you're working with text files, like a document, like a written document or code, your computer can figure out, or Git can figure out just what was changed and save only that instead of resaving the whole document over and over and over, because it gets a bit hard. And then also, when you're saving only the changes, you can actually see what was changed quite easily, as opposed to just knowing that this document, which might be like 30 pages long or 100 pages long, is different from the previous document. Just a quick note. Oh, also please interrupt me if you have questions. So just a quick note about Git versus GitHub, because they kind of get thrown around interchangeably. So Git is the software that actually does version control, and GitHub is an online platform that uses Git to do version control, but that you can also share things with other people and collaborate. And increasingly, GitHub is sort of becoming like a cloud-based Git, in the sense that you can do everything on GitHub that you could do on the computer. So you might come out of this today and think, actually, I don't really like the command line that much. I'd rather just use GitHub. And for most things, that will actually just work great. So just personal story to try to convince you to use Git. Like I said, I learned it once, and then I was very intimidated. And I had a system that I thought was pretty good. So basically what I would do is I'd make a dated folder every day that I did work, and then just copy everything from the previous day or from wherever into that folder, and then like keep working on it. And what this meant was that I did have everything, like I had everything saved that I needed. But then after a year was how long it took for me to realize that I couldn't find stuff anymore. Where I'd be like, oh, I know like maybe 2 months ago I did something that was related to this, but I can't remember where it is. And then I spent like half an hour opening each folder and like opening each file to see like, was it this one? No. So that's kind of when I thought, okay, there's gotta be a better way to do this. And this would still work if I had been keeping notes. Like, for example, if I had a document somewhere that said, in this folder, I did this and this and this. So if you have like a really detailed lab notebook, this will probably work fine. And also, again, if you have lots of space where you can keep copying all of your files and all of your documents fresh every day that you work on them. So, like I said, I started to spend a lot of time looking for stuff. And then I was also forced to use GitHub for a group project, which was really good motivation to learn it. And I had a moment as well where I was working on some code, and then something just inexplicably stopped working. And then because of Git, I was able to kind of go back and just, I didn't even know what I had changed exactly, but I could go back to a previous version and see that I had done something. And if you need any more motivation, Git is very quickly becoming the most popular version control. And this is from 2014, the last data that I have here. So I think it's far and away the most popular version control. So if you leave here and you have a job like Ashwin, they'll probably be using Git. Do you use Git in your job?
All the time.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so again, save only the changes is the philosophy as opposed to saving everything or saving nothing. Git is going to help you save only the changes intelligently. Okay, so this is something that you probably already intuitively know, which is that when version control, you can go back to different points in the past. And this is sort of maybe obvious about how it works, but it wasn't obvious to me how to do this in Git, so I'll try to spend time making sure that it's clear how you actually go back to the past and see it. And when you save a change in Git or GitHub, it's called a commit. It just is. A lot of the names of things in Git are kind of weird, called commit. And the files that are under version control with Git live in a repository or repo. So when you hear people talk about repos, like on GitHub, it's basically a folder that's under version control altogether. Okay, so now we're gonna do this on the command line. So has everyone got your terminal open in Git?
So is it the Git terminal or the terminal of the Windows terminal?
So did you install Git Bash or did you install?
Git Bash.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure if newer Windows uses this, but probably Git Bash is what you should use because I know some of the Bash commands don't work in the Windows default terminal. So Git Bash. Okay, so just a quick, were any of you here at the Bash lesson? Yeah, okay. So anything that starts with a hash symbol is a commit, or sorry, a comment. So if I type hash symbol and enter, nothing will happen, it won't run it. So if you were writing notes to yourself that you were gonna execute in the command line, they would show up. They would not run if you use the hash symbol. Okay, so we're gonna do some configuration. You only have to do this once. So if you've ever done Git before, you probably already have this. You can check if you do git config -- list and hit enter. And if you have something under name email, then you can skip this. If not, you'll do this step. So I'll just go through it to set the default email. So this is basically so that when you make changes on Git, it assigns the author of the commit with your email and name. Okay, git config -- global user.name and then your name. So this is my name. And hit enter. And you won't see anything if it worked. You can check that it did by doing git config -- list again. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna add a space in my prompt so that this is easier to read. Okay, that's good. So we did git config -- global user.name. Now we're gonna do git config -- global user.email and then your email address. This does not have to be the email associated with your GitHub account. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's just purely to identify your commits on your computer. And this lives on this particular machine. Okay, One more that just makes it look kind of nice when you're printing stuff. Git config -- global color.ui auto. And lastly, let's set the editor default. This might not work depending on what you have. Core.editor. So I'm going to set mine to nano. You can try this. If it works, that's great because nano is a better default than Vim probably, which is the current default. But if you try this and it doesn't work, that's okay. And one more time, git config -- list will show us all these things. Okay, any questions so far? This was sort of like boring and setup. Okay, so now let's make let's go through kind of the steps of like creating a project, creating files, and then using Git to do version control. So just so we're all working in the same place, let's create a folder on desktop. So to go to your desktop, type cd space desktop. And you'll know if you're there when you type pwd and enter, and it shows you the path, which is desktop. And then let's make a directory called thesis, very ambitious. And there's no output again, but we can see what's on your desktop by, I actually don't know what's on my desktop, this can be very embarrassing, by typing ls. Okay, so somewhere in here is a folder called thesis. Cool. And now let's enter the thesis folder, cd thesis. And one more pwd will show us that we're in there, desktop/thesis. Okay, so we did cd desktop, mkdir thesis, cd thesis. Nothing is in there, just making sure. Okay, so now you can do this in a folder that already has files in it, but we're going to initialize a Git repository in this empty folder, which means that from now on, everything we do here, we have the option to track it with Git. So to do that, we type git init. Initialize empty Git repository in this folder. So let's do one more ls after that. There's still nothing. But if we do ls-a, we'll see that there's this hidden folder now called .git. And it wasn't there before, you just have to take my word for it. So if you want, you can go in there and take a look. I won't do that, but basically don't delete that folder if you want your version control history. If you delete it, that's where all of the changes are saved, basically. And sometimes if you run into issues with Git, it'll tell you to like go in there and like poke around. I don't recommend that because it's probably gonna mess things up. But you could look in there and just see what it's doing in the background if you're curious. Okay, so let's make a file and then we'll start tracking it with version control. The command touch, it basically touches a file, so you can use it to create a file or to update the timestamp of a file that already exists. So we'll make a new file. Touch intro.txt. This is the intro for my thesis. So now we have this file, intro.txt. Okay. Now, this is the first important Git command that you will use probably like every third Git command that you run, Git Status, and enter. So Git Status will always tell you what the state of your file folder is, what the state of your repository is in terms of what's been changed, what's being tracked by Git, what's not being tracked. So right now, it tells us we're on branch master. I might talk about branches a bit at the end. No commits have been made. This is the first commit. And there is one untracked file called intro.txt. And sometimes Git status will tell you helpful hints about what you should do or could do next. So it says use git add file to include what will be committed. So we could add this file right now, but it's empty, so that's kind of boring. So let's add some text to the file before we actually save any changes. So this is another kind of philosophical point, I guess, is that because you're choosing when to make a commit, you can choose what kind of change is like a block, a change block. Whereas in something like Dropbox or in Google Docs, it's just saving like some regular timestamp that it's decided is frequent enough. This allows you to say, okay, I've done enough work now to be a commit, and I can commit it. So it's a bit personal, like how much you decide that you want to include each time, but and in these examples, we'll be doing like very small changes. You might do more changes if you're working on stuff yourself. Okay, let's add some text to this file. So I'm going to use the editor Nano. Did Nano work for you guys? Okay, so then this should work too. You can type Nano. I'll go nano intro.txt. And then hit enter. So it doesn't matter how you edit this file. If you have another editor that you like Atom or Notepad++, or you could even do this with any editor that you normally use. Okay. So now, are you all looking at a screen like this? Okay. So now this is the Nano editor. We can edit this file. Shoot, this is stressful now. I have to feel like I'm writing my thesis. Okay. Bacteria. Okay. It's probably not where you'd put the title for real, but let's just start there. So now that I typed some text, Control X will try to exit the file, and it'll ask me if it wants to save changes. So if I do Control X and then hit Y to save the changes, it'll ask me what file name to write to. It's already got the file name that I want, so I hit enter. And now I'm back in my command line. Does this work for you? You back there? Okay. Let's do Git Status again. And it looks the same because we still have one untracked file. As far as Git knows, it's no different. But now if we look inside intro, the command cat will tell us. And one bash tip, which if you were here, hopefully was covered. If you hit tab, it will autocomplete if possible what you're typing, which is really handy. Cat intro.txt and enter, and it just shows us the contents of the file. Okay, so now we're gonna go through the sequence of adding and committing and saving a change on Git. So let's do it first, and I'll talk a bit about what those steps mean and why they exist. So the first thing is git add, and then the file name. And again, you can start typing it and hit tab, and it will complete. And we're doing what Git Status suggested here, git add file. So that's all you got to do, git add file name, and hit enter. And let's do Git Status again and see what changed. So now, instead of being in red as an untracked file, we have this file in green which says to be committed. So now Git is sort of knowing that we have something in the staging area that we'd like to save. And there are always these two steps when you're making a Git commit. Is first you have to add it, and then you have to commit it. So let's do Git commit. Wait a second, I'll go to the top again. So all these commands start with git. We had git status, git add, and now we're doing git commit. If you just type git commit and then enter, it will automatically pop up your text editor default and make you enter a message. So you cannot, I mean, you probably could through trickery enter an empty commit message, but it really, really does not want you to enter an empty commit message. And that's kind of the point, is that you should be describing the changes that you make, because future you or your collaborators, most likely future you, is reading these messages being like, why did I do this? What does this change mean? And you can do things like search those messages, filter them for different words using all the bash things that you might have learned before. So it's helpful to make these descriptive. At the same time, you don't want them to be like very, very long, because that's also annoying to kind of work with. So if you don't want to do the text editor route, which it will force you to by default, you can add this flag -m, and then between quotes, just type your commit message. Something boring like begin thesis introduction. So if I was working on my thesis and I had, say, written the first 2 paragraphs, I might say something like, add paragraphs about blah, 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 just very briefly what I was doing. And GitHub usually says that the commit should be less than 50 characters. This is not like a rule or anything, but they kind of encourage them to be short. And then when you hit enter, it'll show you that it made this commit. And now let's do git status. I think we're doing git status every other command. Now it says we're on branch master. nothing to commit, working directory clean. This is the view that is nice to see. In practice, I always have like tons of untracked files hanging around in my folders. But if you were like really on the ball, you would have a clean working directory. It means nothing's been changed, everything has been saved. Sort of like, since you're doing this manually, when you go home at the end of the day, this is what you would like to see so that you don't lose anything potentially. Okay, so now a new command, git log. We made changes. How do we see what changes we made? Git log shows you in reverse chronological order every commit that is made in that repository. So right now there's only one, and it's showing us some commit identifier, and then the author and date. And this information here is what you set in the initial configuration. And then it shows the message as well. And at the end, if there's time, I'll talk about some kind of modifiers you can add to git log to make it show different stuff. So if you want to see the actual change in the log, you can show that too, for example. This long thing here is unique in the universe, supposedly, to this commit. Like it's long enough that it will never appear again. So every commit in the world has its own unique identifier forever. Okay, let's do another change, and then we'll talk about kind of navigating through history and stuff like that. Nano intro.txt. Bacteria, you can type whatever you want. Make some text change to your file, and then when you're done, Control X, ask you to save, Y to accept the changes, and then Enter to accept with that file name. And if we do cat intro.txt, we'll see now this new text as well. So we did nano intro.txt. And now let's do another git status. So instead of saying untracked file intro.txt, since we've added intro.txt with one git commit, Git is watching forever after to see what happens with this file. So if we never make another commit, it will always just say modified intro.txt. If you make a new file and don't ever add any commits, it'll be in a different list with untracked files. But now Git knows that it's been changed. And this is where there are some other handy commands. Now that Git is tracking it, Git will help us see what's been changed. So the command Git Diff, enter, will by default show you everything that's different between the last commit and all of the changed files in your working directory that are being tracked by Git. So in green, it shows the 2 lines or the 3 lines here that I added. Are there any questions about this so far? Okay. So let's commit this. Git commit begin intro paragraph. Whoops, we forgot to add first. Okay. We have to actually do git add intro.txt. Well, just to see what happened there. Let's do git status. So actually nothing happened. If I did git commit with no actual added file, nothing happens. So let's do git add intro.txt and git status. And now it's in green, ready to be committed. So now we can commit. Git commit -m. And now it actually made the commit. So, okay, maybe now's a good time to talk about this. The reason why these are 2 steps is because you might do lots of different things and only want to save certain ones. That's the short version. So the analogy that software carpentry uses is like you're assembling everyone for the picture, but you might want to take a picture of the ones who are ready and not the ones who are like still kind of strolling over. So in practice, you will be working on lots of different stuff. You might do a little bit of the intro, you might work on something else, you might fiddle with some codes in the same folder. So the whole 2-stage process allows you to be very precise about which things are kind of together in a commit. So we haven't done this yet, but you can add multiple files to one commit. So if they're all related, like if you want to just say updated thesis, maybe that's too broad, but you could add like your intro, your chapter 1, all the different files and save them all as one chunk. So yeah, git add gives you this very precise control over what you're going to commit each time. Okay, and the git log will show us now 2 commits. This is the first one that we saw before, and now there's a new one on top, the one we just did. Okay, let's make one more change. Nano intro.txt. Viruses rely on bacteria to complete their life cycle. Control X, Y, enter. So we already saw Git Diff. We can do it again, and now it's showing us this new line that we added. You can kind of see more specific differences. So Git Diff head, capital letters, intro.txt. This, in this case, it's the same output, but what head means, head is the last commit. So when you say Git Diff head, file name, it's showing you the difference between the file name in your working directory and the file name and the last commit. So again, if you're making lots of different changes and you only wanted to look at one particular file, you could say Git Diff this particular file. Since we already made a change, this is the same as just doing Git Diff intro.txt, which is the form that I would more normally use. Sorry, it's hard to read that. That was Git Diff intro.txt. In this case, gives the same output as Git Diff head intro.txt. But now with head, you can also kind of step back different commits. So you could do Git Diff head tilde 1 intro.txt. And now it's looking back at the difference between your working directory for this file and 2 commits in the past instead of 1 commit in the past. So whereas before, this is the line we added most recently, now it's showing us the new line and the previous commit as well. You can also, and this is something that I use a lot, use that specific commit identifier to look at the difference between 2 commits. So let's do git log to remind us what those were. So let's say we want to know the difference between the working directory and the first commit. Git diff. So you can type the first, usually 4 or 5 or 6 characters is enough to identify it in your repository. So git diff for, this will be different for you, so just type the first couple letters, / numbers. So this is the same as doing git diff head tilde 1, because it's showing us the difference between the present and this commit here. Okay, let's add and then commit the change because we still have this change floating around in our working directory. Git add intro.txt. Even though I always know usually what I just added, I always do git status by reflex just to kind of see that it's there. So you will find yourself typing git status every other command. And this looks the way I want. We got intro.txt that's ready to be committed. Git commit -n. Explain virus life cycle. I didn't really, but we started. Okay, let's say something happens and you overwrite the file. So let's do now intro.txt and just delete everything. So in Nano, you can do Control K to delete lines. You can also use your cursor and then backspace. And let's save that. Okay, I've saved over my entire thesis. catastrophe. Under normal circumstances, this is a huge disaster. But thankfully we're using Git and it's not a disaster. So let's do Git status and see what happened. There's modified. If we did cat intro.txt, you would see that it's empty. Your cat walked over your keyboard, hit some unlucky keys, and now your thesis is gone. This sort of happened to me, but didn't delete stuff. She just broke things. Okay. Git checkout is another command we're going to learn. Okay, Git status. That's what we're looking at. Git checkout, you can pull any version of a file from any point in the past into the present. So this is something that was hard for me to understand at first, but when you're making changes to a file, when you're checking stuff out, it becomes that way in your working directory. So if you were to go to your regular file navigator, with the one that you normally use or click on through with, and look at this file right now in some different text editor, it would still be empty. And when we go and check it out, which we'll do in a second, we can see that, we'll be able to see that it has changed if you look at it any other way as well. So if this actually happened to you, like maybe this wasn't an accident, you think everything sucks, I'm going to start over. You could commit this change and still go back to the past. But we're going to say, actually, I don't want to say this at all. This was a mistake. I'm going to pull a previous version from the past. Okay, let's use git log. Actually, we don't need git log. We just know we want the most recent commit in this case. So we can do git checkout. And now I have to tell it what to actually check out. So we'll do head intro.txt. And again, head is always pointing to the most recent commit. So this tells git checkout, just whatever version of intro was last committed, get that one for me in the working directory. I'm going to hit enter. If we do git status now, it will show me that nothing has changed because we've gone back to the most recent commit. So everything kind of past that has been deleted. So this can be a little dangerous. Like let's say you actually might have wanted to save that, you should probably commit it and then go back. So sometimes you're working on something that you think, maybe I don't want to keep this. It's still a good idea to commit it because you can always get back the previous version this way. Okay, whew. Thesis is not deleted. And in general, so you can always use git checkout, git diff, and git log with a particular file name or without. So we've just been doing git log, for example, by itself. You could also do git log intro.txt. This is one that I would do a lot because I often want to see, okay, what's the history for the specific file that I'm working on right now, not the whole repository. Okay, do we go to 7? Okay. So let's do git checkout again with a different commit and see what happens. So in this case, because we went to head, git is like, yeah, okay, this is back where we started. Everything is kind of where we left it. But let's say you wanted to go back to a previous version and potentially save that one or use that one. We do git checkout. And here you have the option of doing something like head ~1 intro.txt. You could do head ~1 by itself, or you could do the commit identifier. I'm going to choose the middle one here, the second most recent one. So if I just type the commit identifier and no file name and hit enter, which I will do, I have been given this warning that I'm now in detached head state. So what this means is that basically your commit history is a series of connected lines right now. Each of them points to the previous point in the past. And I've just jumped back completely to the past. So if I had changed lots of files, they would all be as they were at this last commit. And Git doesn't like this because it doesn't actually know how to get to the future. It only knows what's from the past. So each commit points to the previous commit. They don't point forward. So if I stick around here for a long time, I think it's about 2 weeks usually before Git would clean this up, you might lose the kind of future stuff. So if you did want to actually stay here, like get everything as it was here and keep working, you would you would make a branch, which is what Git's suggesting. We probably won't talk about that. I think that's going to be covered more next time we talk about GitHub. But the safer thing to do is just pull the particular file or files that you want from the past into the present, and then make a new commit so that the kind of chain of time is preserved. So, okay, this is a bit scary, but basically the safe way to get out of here is just to git checkout master. Or git checkout head, I think would work. No, that wouldn't work. So now, let me actually just go back to what I just did to show you what git log would show. So if I hit up arrow, it will show me commands that I did in the past. So if I go back to git checkout that commit, and now we git log, it's only showing me the first two commits and not the third one, because the third one, again, is in the future. Git doesn't know about it. But if I go git checkout master, and then git log, everything looks as it should. So master is the nickname for the branch that we're on by default. It's called master, which is what you see when you type something like git status. It tells you on branch master. So if you happen to name it something different, or you happen to be working on a different named branch, you could do git checkout. That branch name would take you to the most recent commit in that branch. Okay, so let's say we want to get the past. We still want to do that, but we don't want detached head. And I remember what these are, so we're going to do git checkout middle commit again. But this time I'm going to specify the file name, intro.txt. So instead of actually taking Git to that point in the past, and you could confirm that this had happened if you had lots of files by going and looking in your file explorer or something like that and looking at all the changes and being like, yes, this is actually the way that it looked at that time. Now there's no complaints. If we do git log, the commit history looks the same as it did before. And now git status will look a bit different. So when you do git checkout, it automatically takes what you checked out and puts it in the staging area. Because now, let's say we wanted to take what we had in the past and kind of work from there, you could commit this past version and then keep going. So now your timeline is like change, 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 revert the change, change, keep going, keep going. So you can kind of, even a deletion, which is sort of a step back in time, you can think of as a change stacking forward in time, if that makes sense. So I don't really actually want to delete that line that I had. I don't want to start from here. So if you do this, maybe you do this. One reason why you might do this is, let's say you want to run the code that you had at this time. So you think, oh, I know I made a good plot in February. You find the code from that day. You do git checkout, you run it, and then you think, okay, that's fine. I can stay in the past. I'm going to go back to the current version. You can do git reset, which is what it's suggesting here, to remove these changes from the staging area and take it back to the head. Git reset head intro.txt. And it tells us that it's unstaged those changes. So it's kind of undone the git add that automatically happened when we did git checkout. But those changes are still there. So if we do git status, we'll see that intro.txt has been modified. And a git diff will tell us what the change was. And because I checked out that previous commit, the change that Git is looking at now is basically a change where I deleted that line. So if I still think, yeah, I definitely don't want this. So one thing you do here, for example, is you could make more changes and then commit them. But in this case, let's say we don't want this at all. There's more suggestions here, and we're going to do this one. You can do git checkout -- file, which will discard the changes. And the way to think about that is when you do git checkout, you are telling Git to fetch the version of a file from some point in time. The -- is just saying, like, I'm not specifying where from. The default is sort of the most recent commit, -- intro.txt. So this will just check out the version of intro that was the most recent commit. You could be more specific. You could say git checkout head intro.txt. These would both do the same thing. And Git status should show us that we're back where we started. And Git log should look the way that we expect as well. Okay, so in the last 10 minutes, we could do a little bit with GitHub. We could talk about kind of like handy tricks that I like in Git. What would you like to see? What would be most helpful to you? Tricks? Okay. GitHub is coming, right? Yeah. Like next. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We won't talk about GitHub then. So these are a few that I looked up today and a few that I use most commonly myself when I'm working with Git just on my own on a computer. So there are some options for Git log that I like. One of them is called --graph. So this won't make a big difference when you're working in this sort of linear timeline with yourself. But if you were to start making branches or if you just start having collaborators, this would show you like where things diverged, where they got kind of combined back together. So it shows you just the lines between the commits, basically. Another thing you can add is --abrev commit. That's ABBREV -commit, which stands for abbreviate commit. Does this do anything different? This looks about the same. Oh, actually, I know what this did. This cut off the end of these things. So this is just sort of nicer to look at. If you're the kind of person who like finds just like text distracting, this makes your commit identifier shorter. That's nice. Another one, git log. Let's start stacking these together. And again, you could just use up arrow to get the most recent thing and then just add on what I'm typing. Decorate. This is one that Elliot showed me. So decorate, again, it's not super useful in this specific situation, but it shows you where head is and what the branch name is. So that's pretty handy if you have different branches, or if you were, say, in detached head, it would tell you that your head was still at the top, but it would be a different commit. Something that I always find strange that's not normally showed by default on Git log is the name of the file that was changed. Because if you're typing Git log in a folder where you have lots of different files, you might actually want to know what's the file name. And before you start putting that in the commit, this information is also stored. You can access it with git log --name only. If you just want to see the name, for example. So now it shows us which file we changed. There's sort of different versions of this command. If you want to see the name, git log --name status. I think this shows you the full path name. Okay, so now it's showing us, in addition, this letter here, MMA. I believe that means modified, added. So it tells you like what the change was that you made. Was it a modification? Was it creating the file? That can be helpful. Now we know this file. If I was scrolling, through my history, which was really, really long, and I see an A, it's like, okay, that's the end of that history for that file, which you could also get by just adding that file name to your Git log. You can always stick the file name on the end. So if you're like git log name status, intro.txt. Again, these examples, they're all going to look the same because, we haven't made too many changes. So this might not have happened to you yet because my font is much bigger, but when you have more commits that fit on the page, it'll take you into this view where you can keep paging down. So the colon here means that there's more stuff to be seen. So if I keep hitting enter, in this case, it's actually not much more, but you'll keep kind of scrolling down if you hit enter. And if you want to get out of that, you can hit Q. So I'll show again just what that would look like. Q will take me back to my normal prompt. Q and Control-C are like just two commands that I just try if I'm like in a view that I don't normally want to be in. It's like, oh, Control-C, yeah, Q. So sometimes that works. Okay, another one that's nice. Well, Claire. Git log --stat. So this tells you the file name, the commit message, and also more details about what the actual change was. So it tells you here we added 1 line, here we added 3 lines. The last one we added just 1 line. So now that I'm in this long view, if I keep hitting enter, it's just at the end, so I really need to hit Q to get out. Okay, one that I've started liking a lot now that I have a long Git commit history is using the flags after and before in Git log to search for a particular date range. And this is the equivalent of me going into my dated folders and being like, okay, I know I did something cool in February. So in practice, why this is happening is because I've saved my plots in an output folder that's dated, and they're not in a version control, just the script that made them is, so I can look in the folder and be like, oh, this plot is the one that I'm trying to find. And then I can look for the change that was happening around the time of that plot. This doesn't work as well if you are also guilty, like me, of not committing things very fast. So if you make a change and then only make a commit the next time you go to change that file, which happens to me quite a bit, then you might have to be like quite broad with your date searches. But you can still look like commits on either end and be like, okay, I didn't commit anything for a month, but the next change is actually the one that made this plot a month ago. So usually, even like using it badly like I do, it can still be really helpful. So let's just do this git log thing. Git log -- after equals. Now you can put in a date. So like, this is going to be kind of boring because we don't have very many interesting. We could put a timestamp, that might work. Today is the 18th. Let's try doing 18:45. I've never actually tried to set the time before. I'm not that precise, but let's see if this works. Okay. It's July. It's still not working. Let's take off this. 17? There we go. Okay, so it's doing some sort of like non-inclusive. It's looking for something from tomorrow, not something from today. So, which is confusing for why the time thing didn't work. But anyway, I'm sure that there's a Stack Overflow answer about how to specifically do times. No, that didn't work. Like they should be. Like it's only showing me when I just did the 18th. It didn't show me anything, right?
Yeah, but I mean, 18 is after the 18th. All your commits were before 18:45.
The latest one is 6.
Oh, okay. So if I try this with a time that is earlier. Okay, yeah, that works. Okay, yeah, so you can add time. And it works the way that you expect. Okay, this is one that I just saw when I was looking up stuff for this. Actually, it's 7, so we'll stop. Get clear is not a command. Okay. Yeah, there's lots of other stuff you can do. You can look up like how do you search for specific changes in specific files. You can do that. It becomes really powerful because you can search your commits, you can search the actual changes, you can search when they happened, you can search who made the change. Any combination of all these things is super helpful. Okay, yeah, we'll stop there.
So next week's, well, this was the first of our series of kind of reproducible science with Git sessions. So next week isn't actually like a traditional kind of lesson. Instead, we're having a bit of a discussion session, kind of called it a journal of your